Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Wednesday, the 3rd of July, 7:39 p.m., and I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. And I wanted to do a slightly different show tonight, talk about some things, and maybe extrapolate from the books and distill a few lessons from the books and these sorts of things. You've got some pictures of my life up here. That's the school. I'm standing in the school up here in the mountains. There's a small school that has about a dozen kids in it, Costa Rican and Quebecer native and Nicaraguan, who all go to school up here. That is, I think that's the Christmas party last year. Yeah, when I first got my pup, who's been with me about a year and a half now, yeah. So he's a big boy now, like that's him down in the corner on the bed now. So, and that's his girlfriend. That's Sol and that's Lulu. All those cats are unnamed. We don't name cats up here. There's just absolutely no need to name a cat up here. No need whatsoever. Let me just check this thing and make sure that it's going. And yeah, it is. Yeah, it's going great. Okay. So let me make sure I can get the docs here. YouTube Live Control Panel. There we go. Yes, there we go. Yeah, it's all good. Okay. So, there's a lot going on, and I talk about things on my show, the Talamanca Review, which a number of people still find very unsettling. I had a number of comments, 2 or 3. I didn't see them when they came in. I think they came in after the broadcast, some of them, but there are a number of people who really believe that we're in an AI-driven chaos now. I don't believe that. And there's a number of reasons I don't believe that, not least of which I've spoken to some people who really know. And they tell me that it's greatly exaggerated, that yes, AI can do a few things, and it's probably significantly more advanced than what we're seeing in ChatGPT, but ChatGPT isn't even all that great. It just goes out and gathers some information and presents a language model. That's it, large language models. But to be able to create the kind of chaos that people are talking about now, I don't know about that. I'm sure it's part of the incitement, especially in social media. There's no doubt in my mind that it's part of the incitement, but believe me when I tell you, AI is not the great threat. The great threat is and always has been us, the human race. And that's what this show is about tonight. It's about what it means to be human and what your responsibilities are when you're alive. And this is a much bigger topic than most people think. Way bigger. Okay? Most people think that it hey Chris, most people think that it just has something to do with, you know, your carbon footprint. Watch your carbon footprint while you're alive. That's your human responsibility in this generation, which is a bunch of bullshit too, right? But there's a tremendous amount of responsibility to being a human being. And nobody is really out there telling people anything about these responsibilities. Anything about what our real responsibility is when we're in a body. So I'm going to explain something to you now that I don't think anybody's ever explained before. They're sort of like gaps in the disclosure. Or maybe the people who were doing the talking, they didn't know. Or they knew and they just didn't mention it for whatever reasons. But it's very important nonetheless. So when you have a body, you have a tremendous responsibility, a human body. Because the human body is the most advanced piece of technology on the planet. Nothing even comes close. Nothing even comes close. No supercomputer, no nothing. Nothing comes close to the human body. And the psyche that goes with it. Okay? And it's powered by a God spark we call a soul. Now, the body is the principal means by which conscious energies interact with the physical environment. Think of it as a spacesuit operating in this environment. Okay? A suit that we wear so that we can walk around, talk, be physically present, and affect people and events. Now, how do you think you affect people? Not many people would ask themselves that question. How do we affect other human beings in our human journey? My words affect people, my books affect people, but it's a voluntary event to listen to me, and it's a voluntary event to read me. So it is, in a sense, a karma-free event for me. There's no karma for me in speaking, because I don't force anybody to listen to me. Nobody's livelihood is dependent on listening to me. I'm not anybody's boss. They're not going to get fired if they don't listen to me. You're not going to have any consequence in your life if you don't buy one of my books. It just is the way it is. So engaging me or the books is a benign engagement. People choose to do it. They choose to do it to get something out of it. Thanks, Nick. And good on you. I get a lot from writing them. It is a tremendous feeling for me to have what I would call a meaningful reader. A meaningful reader is somebody who reads considerately, understands the great bulk of what I'm trying to convey in a book, and appreciates it, and also agrees that it needed to be said. And that is a tremendous experience for me. It makes me feel needed, the way a mother feels needed. And if you look at human beings... Well, thanks, Nick. Nick's got 3 of the books on the way. If you look at human beings closely, the ones that are the happiest are the ones that find a place where they're needed. And what happens when you're needed and you live for the needs of others, whether it be a mother and her children or some other example on par with that, a father for his children and his family? You dissolve yourself. Isn't that interesting? That the result of being needed and giving into that service is that you dissolve yourself. You stop thinking about yourself and you dissolve yourself into the needs of others. Isn't that a spiritual precept? Isn't that what all the sages and the yogis are talking about when they say destroy your ego? Dissolve yourself into others. You look at the people who are super successful in the world, it's a chain of dissolution. The cultures that love and put the most into their children, okay? Those end up being the most powerful cultures. To live for others. It's a beautiful thing, and I get a little bit of that through writing. To be of service, to dissolve myself and to be of service to others, and it's a wonderful feeling. Absolutely wonderful feeling. So again, circling back, what are the responsibilities of a human being? So when you're given a body and you're having a life, you're responsible for the body as an instrument of communication with the world. I'm going to repeat that. Very important. I'll repeat it one more time, and then I'll give a deeper explanation of it. When you're given a body, you are responsible for that body as an instrument of communication with the physical world. Okay? So for things to interact with this world, they have to come through a human being. They have to be grounded in a human being. The human being is the ground wire. Go back to the movie The Exorcist, William Peter Blatty, the Jesuit. William Friedkin, a Jesuit. When I say Jesuit, I mean that they went to Jesuit universities. Look at their work. So if you see something paranormal going on around you, someone around you is grounding that energy. The paranormal cannot operate independent of human agency. We are the agents on this planet. It's our domain. The human being. There are other creatures, other sentient beings on this planet, no doubt. Their tasks are much more specific, and they're usually very often allocated a semi-physical, semi-astral existence. There's loads of these kinds of beings out there. Forests have them in Scandinavia. Jungles have them. We have those beings here in Costa Rica. I won't name them all. There's several races of beings, little people. They really exist. They sort of fall into that Bigfoot category. Right? So Bigfoot can move in and out of this dimension. It's physical when it's here. You'll see footprints and everything. But Bigfoot knows how to go in and out of portals. Okay? But the absolute dominion holder of reality on this planet is the human being at this moment in history. It hasn't always been. And there's always a sentient species. So when you look at a class of life like mammalian life, we are the sentient, the highest form of sentience in the mammalian the line of creation. Mammals are lions, tigers, deers, bears, all of this sort of stuff, right? And we're at the top of that creational pile. In the past, when the dinosaurs were here, the reptilian would have been the sentient being. So the reptilians were here millions of years ago. Still here, but they were here millions of years ago. Okay, so you're starting to get an understanding of the relationship between the astral and the physical. Time moves differently on the astral. Certain beings can live on the astral for long periods of time. Not all beings, but certain beings. A human being might be able to live on the astral for 1,000 to 3,000 years. And then what we call the astral body would begin to dissolve. Its energetic instantiation would begin to disintegrate. Like the physical body begins to disintegrate. The physical body begins to disintegrate because the cells can no longer reproduce. So you don't get new hair cells, you don't get new skin cells. And then the body starts to fall away. The disintegration process on the astral is similar, but it's more related to light than it is to matter. Okay? Very certain forms of instantiated light. Now remember my thoughts on inner light. There's an inner light that's constant and eternal. This is the light of God. It's object. It's not your imagination. It's not a metaphor. It's not an allegory. You can literally see it in your forehead in deep prayer and deep meditation. Okay? And then there's the other form of light, which is your ability to imagine. Okay? So if you look at that picture of me holding my puppy in the center of the school 2 Christmases ago, would you be able to see me if it was midnight and there were no lights on and there were no candles on? No. You wouldn't see any of those people sitting down in the chairs. You wouldn't see me standing there in my boots with my dog and my big smile, so happy to have my new dog. You wouldn't see any of that stuff. You would just see darkness. You would see nothing. Darkness is a thing, so you're seeing darkness, but there would be an absence of any detail, shape, form, or understanding of what's going on around you. And the same is true for the inner life. If you can't imagine, then you can't generate the light to see within yourself. Okay? So try to imagine anything. Try to imagine the face of your mother in your mind's eye right now. Hold it as closely as you can there. Really try to see it. Concentrate. And the way you do it is you focus your attention to as small a point as you can, just above your nose bridge and your forehead. Don't scatter it across your inner screen. Focus it at a pinpoint. And tell your consciousness what you want to see and see if the image comes to you. Okay? If it does, you have inner light. If it doesn't, you're not able to generate any inner light right now. And you would do well to find out why that is. Because that's a tremendous deficit in living this life. It's a tremendous liability not to have any inner light. So circling back to The Exorcist. Things move around in the house. Doors close on their own. When the male housekeeper goes up to the attic to check for the rats, the candlestick explodes into flame. If you've never been around the supernatural, the first couple times your heart skips a beat. I don't care how tough you think you are. Your heart's going to skip a beat. Because it's something we're not used to. And the mind, which is always trying to make us comfortable, the mind is not our friend from a spiritual perspective. The mind is like a concierge that wants to make sure our existence in this physical life is comfortable. But, concierges can be quite corrupting as well. They get cocaine, they get prostitutes, they do all kinds of things, right? So the mind is like your concierge. And it's treating your life like a 5-star hotel experience. But it'll lie to you. It'll ingratiate. It'll flatter you. And if you don't have any paranormal experiences, your mind will come in and without telling you, it will create a reality limitation to give you comfort, because that's the mind's job, is to make you comfortable. It's like a computer on board for the ride of this life, but the ultimate AI computer, getting back to AI. So we exist beyond the mind, we know this. If you believe that life goes on after the body, it goes on after the brain. And if it goes on after the brain, it goes on after what we call mind. So we are not mind. René Descartes was wrong when he said, "I think, therefore I am." The Bible is much closer when it says, "I am that I am." Big topic. Trying to get my head around this, sitting here trying to circumscribe it, trying to get around it. It's not a glib topic. It's not something I can flippantly talk about. So what the mind is trying to do is put you at ease, like our mothers do this to a certain extent as well. I mean, depending on your mother, I suppose. But a general attribute of mothers is to make us feel good. If you think there's a monster in your closet, there may very well be on the astral. But by the time somebody's old enough to have children, they've shut down their divine imagination and they're not going to believe it. Most people. If you happen to have a semi-enlightened mother or father, you got very lucky. And that can help a lot in the raising of a child. I'll tell a story about my son in a moment after this, but your mother will say, well, there's no such thing as monsters and there's nothing in the closet. But you know there's something there. Your mom just can't see it. But your mom lies to you to make you feel better. And very often, a lot of us will believe our moms just for the ability to feel better and get over our fear. Right? They made a movie about this, Monsters, Inc. Brilliant movie, actually. Maybe one of Pixar's best movies. And true on so many levels, by the way. Monsters, Inc. is an incredible piece of disclosure. So, the mind will try to comfort you. That's what it does. But it won't tell you the truth. To understand what the truth is, you have to perceive it. And to perceive correctly, you have to be autonomous. I was going to call this podcast Being Sovereign, but that word is so polluted now with all these crazy fucking armed-to-the-teeth patriots and shit like this. But there's a spiritual nature to being sovereign as well that's extremely important. A spiritual nature to it. And basically it means that you understand all the things I'm talking about tonight and what your responsibilities are when you're given a body. Because you're responsible for everything that happens through your body. So Regan MacNeil in The Exorcist was responsible for the damage that demon did through her body while she was possessed. I know. It sounds unfair, doesn't it? Okay. So let's just say hypothetically that there was a class of magicians out there that could control demons and certain entities on the astral plane, and even to a certain extent control dead human beings. And of course these beings exist in varying degrees and levels. You would be very interested in having a world where people were able to be used by your spirits. So if you call forth a spirit in a ritual, and you want that spirit to occupy something, and you want that spirit to do something while that person is occupied, to operate through that grounded body, then you have to make sure that that human being is occupiable, that they can be possessed or that they can be cohabitated. And then when the spirit's with them, you can affect whatever it is that you want to affect. Okay? It is true that I've read a lot of occult literature, and I've read a lot of spiritual texts, and I've read a lot of holy texts. But when I talk to this level of detail, I talk from experience. Because it would be foolhardy to speak about these things from an academic perspective or a mental perspective. I wouldn't be doing you any favors. I would be like a priest, just doing what I learned in seminary. But it's not like that. I'm speaking to you from experience. Loads and loads and loads of experience, by the way. So, to be a sovereign means that, and to be alone in the world, or being on a solo journey, it means you're in control of yourself, and nothing violates you, and nothing operates through your space without your consent, which would mean generally just you. And this is extremely important for cleaning up your karmic record, because you're responsible for the body you're given. And nothing happens on this planet except through human agency. So when you're listening to some so-called truth teller in a podcast, and they're telling you about how the reptilians control this world, or the gray aliens control this world, or the Zeta Reticulans control this world, or Satan and the demons control this world, or any other thing you want to fit into the variable there. You just look them right in the eyes and you say, how? How do they do it? They don't have arms, they don't have legs, they can't walk to the post office, they can't go to the corner store and get a Snickers and a Pepsi. How in the fuck are they controlling things here? And you will quickly, very quickly, weed out the bullshit artists. And if you're in a circle of people where this person is an esteemed speaker, you will be quickly ejected from that circle, and your name will be held in ill repute. Because you ask the question they don't know, or they know and they don't want to answer. This happened to me. So when I write these books, I spend usually they take about 6 months to prepare. It's all day, every day, 7 days a week. All day, every day, 7 days a week. I do nothing but work on the books. All day, every day, 7 days a week. For about 6 months. And if I'm working on the book with a partner, that partner becomes my Siamese twin. Happened with John Edmonds, it happened with Bob Wiegand in The Light of Darkness, and it happened with Andrew Bartzis in The Galactic Historian, The World According to Andrew Bartzis. Andrew and I spoke about 4 hours a day for 6 months. Sometimes more than 4 hours a day. And he was one of these people who didn't answer the question, who didn't close the circle. Always close your circles. That's also an occult and a magical principle as well. You're not safe if you don't close that salt circle. You're not safe if you don't close a thought or a realization circle. Don't learn something 95%, learn it 100%, or don't learn it at all. You haven't learned anything if you've gone to a seminar or paid somebody for a reading and they've told you, oh, so-and-so and so-and-so is running the world. How? So with Bartzis, his go-to was the world is controlled through an alliance between the inner Earth and extraterrestrials. And I would say, well, what beings in the inner Earth and what extraterrestrials? And he wouldn't answer. I would say, well, how do they do it? I mean, like, Andrew, who's running the banking system? Who's degenerated the food supply? Who's doing all this? He wouldn't answer. He would just tell me to basically shut up. He'd get very rude. I was just doing my job. Who, what, where, why, when. How. Who, what, where, why, when, how. It's all I was doing. So there's demons around us all the time. There's extraterrestrials around us all the time, but they can't affect us. My mountain is as tranquil as a forest pond on a June day with no wind. There's not a ripple in the pond. In the 10 days leading up to my friend leaving, who was demonically occupied, there were waves all over the pond. The mountain was not tranquil. It was one thing after another, day after day after day. Hi, Mike. This is what I mean when I tell you I learn these things by experience. Okay? The geography of demons and spirits is your psyche. So wherever you have a ley line of connective tissue with somebody else, a strong connection with somebody, the demonic entity or the entity on the other side, it will, once it comes into your consciousness space, it'll see all the relationships and it will begin to affect those people. I have told you, but I'll repeat myself. Numerous people had dreams with demons while I was working on The Devil in Us. Numerous people, at least a half dozen. And they didn't, let's say 5 of the 6 didn't even know I was working on the book. I would just get an email, a text message on Skype, a text message on Facebook Messenger, or a Skype call, or a Facebook Messenger call. Hey, I had this dream. And you tell the person, well, this is why it's happening. So there's this spider web of connectivity on the other side. It's really quite fascinating the way it works. After a number of years of meditating, you become very attentive to your own energy. And then once you understand your own energy, you understand everything that isn't yours. And so when you start to have certain thoughts in a meditative process, you realize those aren't my thoughts. Where are those thoughts coming from? And then you ask. Because a sovereign has rights. Okay, this is what they've been trying to take away from us for 100 years, all through 144 years since 1880. This is what I was trying to tell you in The Devil in Us. They don't want people calling out for spiritual help anymore, and I'm not endorsing any one religion here. It could be Jesus, it could be Shiva, it could be Buddha, it could be your ancestors. It doesn't matter who it is. We have the right to call in forces while we're in a body. We're like on a mission. Think of an incarnation as a mission on this planet, and there's a number of beings that are not incarnate invested in that one life you're living, and they're there for support, just like any astronaut out on a space mission orbiting the Earth has the full support of the NASA staff, or the Russian Space Authority, or the Chinese Space Authority, or the Indian Space Authority. You don't go out into space and then call the Indian Space Authority and say, hey, I'm heading toward a comet. Is there any way you can hit the booster? And nobody picks up. Right? Could you imagine? Hello? Hello? I'm about to hit a meteor. Oh, nobody's listening. I'm here on my own. That's the mindset a lot of people get into before they commit suicide. They get very, very isolated. I'm here on my own. Nobody will help me. They don't know that they can ask. Their heart has lost the connection with that reality. It's really one of the saddest things I've ever seen in my life, is when people lose that spiritual reality. So if anybody ever tells you something as stupid as the inner Earth and extraterrestrials are closing this planet and they don't close the circle, they're a fucking idiot. Okay? I kid you not, you could drop me into the audience of any one of these channelers, Bashar, Dorothy Cannon, any one of them, and I would destroy them in 5 minutes without being rude and without asking stupid questions. They would have me escorted out by security, because I would reveal to everybody there they're complete fucking frauds. Or at the very least, their information is flat. As they're going over the information, speaking in that monotone way, they can't stop and drill down or go up. They can't do either one. They can just stay on that plane of transmission, which is nearly useless, which is why channeling is useless and stupid. But people love power, right? And information is power, and channelers give information. So they get followers. Same thing with Andrew Bartzis. Okay. So if the inner Earth and extraterrestrials are running the planet, they're doing it with human agency, because you cannot run the planet without human agency, which is the whole point of today's show. You can't do it. So who are the human agents? Who's doing their work? Who's carrying their water? Who's making their bed, metaphorically? Because they can't do it themselves. Demon can't go to the post office. A demon can't go to the corner store and get a Pepsi and a Snickers bar. So there has to be human cooperation. So at the end of the day, human beings are controlling the planet, human beings who've sold out their fellow human beings for alliances with non-physical entities who make promises to them. And in many ways, they have forfeited their sovereignty. And it's very difficult to get out of a situation like that once you start it. You're going to need a tremendous amount of spiritual assistance to get out of something like that. So, thanks, man. Kit Walters Music. Yep, thank you very much. It's Bob in accounting. And it works that way even in human affairs too, right? You know, when you read your great stories in history, the great tragedies, the great dramas, one of the things we love most when we're engaging entertainment and we're trying to dramatize ourselves, when we're trying to consume drama, is one of the great forces in those dramatic stories is in fact betrayal. Okay? Women betray men, men betray women, parents betray their children, children betray their parents. Greek myths. Nothing happens on this planet without this cooperation between an incarnate human being and disincarnate beings. Nothing. Never ever think anyone is better than you. They just probably have a good relationship with a disincarnate group. Okay? One of the things I respect about Nikola Tesla is he's one of the only guys who was honest about it. It's the same for everybody. Einstein, Oppenheimer. There's no such thing as genius. You can have minds that work a little bit different. You can have people who have photographic memories, which is good for conceptualizing and concatenating information. Concatenation is sequencing to aggregate to a higher purpose or meaning yield. Okay, it's a term that they often use in programming. You concatenate functions for a larger effect in the program. So like 4 or 5 methods or functions, actions is what a function is. Get, go, pull, these sorts of things. 5, 6, 7 of them concatenate to form a super action, which becomes one action. Right? Concatenation. Great word, concatenate. Now, I really hope that's one of the things you get watching Talamanca Review. The Talamanca Review is an expanded vocabulary because I love language. I really do. So Tesla told the truth. He said, I get my information from extraterrestrials. Nobody really knows. You see, when everybody has an idea, a program in their head when they hear a word. If I say apple, some people imagine a red apple. Some people imagine a Macintosh apple. Some people imagine a Granny Smith green apple. Some people imagine a pear apple. If they live in Costa Rica, they might see a pear apple. You don't exactly know what I'm saying. It's apple. And apple's a pretty specific noun. Right? Crab apple. Pretty specific noun. So if that's a specific noun, and you can't really know for sure what I mean when I say apple, if I don't attribute it with the kind of apple, what does extraterrestrial do? What does it mean when I say that word? Extraterrestrial. Well, break down the language. Extra is more than the normal. Okay? Terrestrial is the earth, related to the earth. Terra. Terrestrial, related to the earth. Extraterrestrial, more than the earth. More than material, more than physical. So extraterrestrial, really, by the etymology of the word, is anything that is sentient and individuated, but not in body. Or something that is in body, but not native to the earth. Very complicated word, extraterrestrial. Tesla certainly did not describe any beings in any great detail. I'm not even sure he saw them, but he knew they were there. And they would communicate by flashing images across his consciousness. Rapid sequence, like 20, 30, 40 images in 3 or 4 seconds. Kind of like a super sentence, or kind of like a book concatenated into a series of images. Right? That's how he got it. Very honest guy. Now, human agency, boots on the ground, stopped that information from going out into widespread usage. That's an example of negative human agency preventing the human race from growing and living harmoniously. Tesla was a step to freedom, and human agents kept us enslaved. In this instance, it was J.P. Morgan and his cronies. Some people give me shit sometimes for just saying it like it is. I wasn't born anti-Semitic. There just happened to be a whole bunch of shitty Jews who don't give a fucking shit if 1,000 goy have to suffer so one Jew can be a billionaire. They don't care. It doesn't affect their heart. They don't feel it the way you or I would feel it. That's just the way it is. It's not anti-Semitism, it's just the way it is. And J.P. Morgan was definitely part of this Jewish cabal. One of the biggest cocksuckers of the early 20th century. Piece of shit. And they all go back to the same thing. They're all pedophiles, they're all ritualists, and they all sacrifice human beings. Who do you think taught them to do that? Other human beings? I mean, at origin. Once it's embedded, it's transferred from generation to generation. But at origin, who do you think taught them to do that? So they're the agents of something that's not physical, not human, something that is extraterrestrial. You can call it demonic if you want. Demons are technically, within the laws of language, as I've just explained them, extraterrestrial. So you can call it a demon if you want. I mean, I've said multiple times on my podcast, I'm not into arguing about this stuff. Let's look at what we have in common. And most people who want to argue this point have absolutely no experience. They have experienced neither extraterrestrials nor demons. I've experienced both, and I have no interest in arguing about it. None whatsoever. So, Rosemary, por favor. Hard to podcast here sometimes. So everybody's working with somebody. And the very best person you can work with is God. But God is... God is the one that loves you the most. And the one that loves you the most is going to tell you the truth. And the truth is never what you want to hear, because we all live in a lie at the beginning of our journey. And that's why the relationship with God is so hard. It's like the father who doesn't spoil you. Makes you work that extra 2 hours on the summer day as after the sun's gone down to make sure the work on the farm is properly done. Doesn't call you in and say, hey, good day's work. And it's the hardest relationship. It's the most rewarding if it works out, if you can form a solid relationship with the divine. It's much easier to form relationships with these middling beings, whether they be gods of some sort, and they're all about, and they want to exchange with us, but remember, they're transactional. God's not the one and only God, the God that created the gods, plural. Maybe I should take a moment to explain this. So we all live in a field of energy that I would call God. It's finer than thought, feeling, or matter. It's finer than memory. It cannot be quantified in any way, shape, or form. It will never be seen by scientists. No instrument ever created by human beings will be able to perceive it. No particle accelerator, no hadron collider, nothing will ever be able to see it. The only instrument or tool on the planet that can interact with God is the human body. Again, going back to the beginning of this podcast, the most magnificent instrument on the body, on the planet, tool, piece of equipment, whatever you want to call it, the most fascinating piece of equipment on the planet is this human body. If you think I'm exaggerating, do a little research into Vedic yoga and look at what those yogis can do with a human body. Okay? So being sovereign means that you control your space, your physical space, your emotional space, your mnemonic space, and your mental space. And you don't rent your body to anybody else, no matter what they're promising. And to rent your body is not, I don't mean that in the sense of prostitution. I mean rent your body for an entity to act on the physical plane through your body. Don't do it. Not worth it. Better to be simple. But everybody wants these powers now. Everybody wants to be psychic. Being psychic is a cursed life, by the way. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It's an absolutely cursed life, being psychic. There's no peace in it. It's like listening to 5 talk radio stations at the same time. You can't get anything really super intelligent unless you focus in, and you've always got to block out the other 4 voices. Okay, it's just too much data coming in to have your psychic centers open. You want to develop divine intuition. You want to develop divine perception, which is simply understanding what's yours and what's not yours. And let me tell you, when you get into yourself, when you get into the contemplative practice, when you get into the meditative space, you will figure out very quickly that there are things attempting to influence you. When you remember that the physical world is just an allegory or a metaphor for the larger worlds. And look what goes on in the physical world. People pay for your attention. They're called advertisers. I renewed my Netflix the other day, and I was surprised to find out that they have a subscription for $5.95 Canadian, which is about $4.35 US a month for all of Netflix, but you have to accept a little bit of advertising. So the advertisers will help pay for your Netflix account if they can rent your attention for 60 seconds. Do you think they're doing that in vain? Do you think they're stupid? Or do you think they know more about the human mind than we do? I would say it's the latter. They know more about the human mind than we do. So there are things trying to influence us all the time. All the time. Things trying to get into us all the time. Now, most people can go about their daily business and never be bothered by this, even if they don't live a deliberately spiritual life, where a deliberately spiritual life would be regular meditation or prayer. They just have enough auric strength by simple virtuous living, and they can even be atheists. As long as they have virtue and the current of love that is invested in other people. So service to others. They're doing something that's good for humanity. Right? The people most susceptible to these energies are the people higher up the chain. Okay? Especially people under title. People under title. Queen, king, duke, duchess, baron, baroness, prince, princess, doctor, judge. I don't know if I have time to explain that one tonight, but somebody in the text remind me and I'll explain it in another show. Concatenate, C-O-N-C-A-T-E-N-T-A-T-E. Concatenate. Somebody in the comments said they liked my brutal honesty. I don't know if there's anything brutal about it. I'm a vegetarian, for crying out loud. What do you mean brutal? It's direct. Okay? Because there's just no time anymore. I wouldn't be talking this way 10 years ago. I could have. I'm 57 now. I could have done these same podcasts at 47. I had the knowledge, I had the experience. But I wouldn't. The climate wasn't right. Now the time and the climate is right. It's just the perfect time to start speaking completely honestly. Because you have people's attention. The people who are aware. you have their attention because they're aware that the system is being demolished, just like the Twin Towers were deliberately demolished, just like Building 7 was deliberately demolished. And in that realization, it's easy for me to go in and grab their attention and say, hey, I have something to tell you. And they hear it. Whereas 10 years ago, 5 years ago, they might not have heard it. Okay? So is the world run by extraterrestrials? Yeah. But through human agency. Okay? So if you could kill all the human beings they work with, cut their heads off, and nobody else cooperated with the negative aliens, their influence here would end. Weird, eh? It's like a combination of Independence Day and Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And remember the totality of my podcast, the Talamanca Review. Sometimes you've got to connect things on your own, okay? So I've already done the short introduction. I'll do a deeper introduction to Pierre Sabak in the future. But Pierre Sabak is a linguist who looked at the etymology of religious language, like seraphim and cherubim, and discovered that it was an entire, basically the uniform commercial code for the solar system and the galaxy and extraterrestrials. That's basically what he discovered. And he wrote a book called The Murder of Reality, which I highly recommend that you read. Highly recommend you read The Murder of Reality. So that whole Abrahamic system is extraterrestrial. Everything's coming out now. Nothing can stay hidden anymore. It's just the way it is. Certain people are going to connect with the way I'm saying it. Other people are going to connect with the way Cliff High is saying it, but it's the same thing. He calls them the Elohim cult. Okay? My criticism of Cliff, if I had a criticism of Cliff, and I don't really have a criticism of Cliff, but because I began my sentence with my criticism of Cliff, I'll give you one, is that he's a much more spiritual person than he lets on, but he plays this stupid intellectual game all the time, trying to prove everything out like a mathematician. You don't have to do that, Cliff. Just be yourself. People know when you're speaking truth. I don't have to have a calculus equation behind my words. Those of you who understand what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying. It's not complicated. Nothing complicated about it at all. So this has been a solo journey. Being a solo journey, that's how your life should be at this point in history. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review. And I will probably do a sequel to this podcast tomorrow, because I'm nowhere near done on this topic. And the general topic to remind you is nothing happens on this planet without human agency. It may be influenced by something that's non-physical, but it has to come through a human mind. Even if the human hand doesn't perpetrate the action, like pick up a rifle and shoot somebody. Okay? I go back to the example of the demon-occupied friend I had up here, who started to affect everything around the mountain. And the night before he was leaving the next day, a woman got possessed on the mountain. A transformer blew, which never happens. I think it's happened one time in the 7 years I've been here, and the other time it happened was a huge thunderstorm. So a transformer blew, a woman got possessed. My son called me the next day and he said, "What's going on?" and detailed 2 or 3 bizarre synchronicities that happened to him in Toronto, and told me that the other person who met this demon-occupied friend of mine was up here on the mountain for 3 weeks, had a terrible nightmare that same night the transformer blew and the woman on the mountain got possessed. And the nightmare took place at my house on the mountain. And my son had to say to him, "That was so-and-so who you met, my dad's friend and my friend. And we're asking him to leave the mountain because he hasn't made a good enough effort to separate from his demon." But that's the power of a human body. And some people want it. I said the podcast was over, but apparently I'm a liar. Some people want it. They want the power. They want the relationship with the demon because it gives them power. Look at me. I can make people have nightmares. That transformer blew because of me, and they like it. They get addicted to it. It's too hard to be a normal schmo with no power, struggling for a relationship with the divine. Right? A lot of these super soldiers, they're not done with their demonic relationships. They hold on to them. They don't let go. And the demons can grant psychic powers as well. Okay? So a demon is a spiritual principality, by the way. It's not, this whole fallen angel shit, you know how I feel about those Abrahamics, right? But so some people choose demonic commiseration over divine commiseration because the demonic is the spiritual association that gives you ice cream. Does what isn't good, spoils you, does what isn't good for you. Okay, so some people do it. And some people get so used to living that way that it's very difficult to give up their demon. But demons are nowhere near the threat we've been told they are. And we are on the cusp of being a species, we human beings, where they're not going to be a threat to us anymore. I quote that line in the Bible before Legion is cast out of those men in the caves into the herd of swine. And Legion says to Christ, "Have you come to torment us before the time?" Now is the time. Humans are rising. This is what's really going on the planet. Okay? It's our time. Our cycles of learning and development and growth through all of the torture, mutilation, and shit these entities and beings have put us through. We just keep coming back, reincarnating, getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and now we're going through a big bell curve, and all of our power is coming into focus. And these things which terrified us in the past will look like slightly dangerous 8-year-old children in the near future. I'm not joking. This is how much power has been invested in human beings. It's always been in us. It's just taken a while to gestate. I'm Bruce McDonald.